Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Lily Rabe, who has two great projects this year, Love and Death and Shrinking. Lily, I wanted to start with Love and Death. And the show is incredible, and like your performance is so great. I guess how much did you know about Betty Gore, before signing onto the project, and kind of like what was your awareness of this case and her story?
My awareness was very minimal, almost non-existent, kind of like one of those back brain flickers of a thing of recognition when I was sent the script and sort of pitched the project. And then I knew reading it that it was true, but it you can't believe that it is. But then, of course, I did a deep dive into everything I possibly could about her and about the story. And the Texas Monthly article is incredible. The book is incredible. And, there's all sorts of information out there, and and it happened. But
Yeah.
I was able, I didn't know really anything about her. And I think, also because of what happened, it's like you just sort of the short version of her is that she's the victim of this unbelievable crime and of this unbelievable murder. So I was felt so privileged, and it was a wonderful responsibility to be tasked with, to really learn everything I could about her.
Yeah, you mentioned that responsibility. I was wondering for you, is like playing a real person, obviously, but someone who's not, like you said, like someone not necessarily famous or in the public eye, right? Like, or is because of this, obviously being murdered in this brutal fashion. I guess, like, how much do you, like, as an actor, then, like, are you trying to play her, like you're playing the script, obviously, and like what's been written in that character, but she's also obviously a real person. And I guess, how did you kind of like, how do you figure that out and balance out like your interpretation, I guess, of her versus like, the research of like what she actually was like, or like what you could find out, I guess. Like, how did you kind of blend that together?
It's always, you always have to kind of tailor. I always want to tailor the approach based on exactly the what you're asking, which is, it's one thing if you're playing Diana or something, and
Right.
they're coming in with so much. That's its own unique challenge, versus the high likelihood that you are introducing the audience to this person. And so something we talked about, and it was sort of across all departments, was making sure that we were finding the most important thing to us in the telling of this story, and this was something I talked about with at length with David and with Leslie, but then also with Michelle, who did my hair, and with the brilliant Audrey, who did the costumes, really finding that balance. The wig is sort of a perfect example, because Betty had a really particular haircut. She had dark hair, and we knew we wanted the dark hair. I knew I wanted the bangs. And then we tried on like 4 wigs before, this is before we'd even gone to Texas to start shooting, just to sort of find that sweet spot where it wouldn't be distracting. And we actually found that the wig that was the most like her exact haircut, it just felt like it would distance the audience a little bit, because they would be so aware of the wig. It was such a strong look that we ended up settling on the wig that was something that would hopefully disappear, and it would be, sure, it's me in a dark wig with bangs, but it wasn't so strong that it would distance the audience. And so really kind of, but the only way to figure that out is to sort of try everything, and then sort of find the sweet spot where you're giving as much access to the story and the character as possible, and honoring the truth. But it's not a documentary. It's not, there is that poetic license. And so, but it's all in service of the story, and and also the world of the show, because I think, you know, they were doing the same thing with everyone else too, with Jesse
Right.
and Lizzie.
Yeah,
We were all
absolutely.
kind of figuring out how far do we go, how far, you know, where are we going to push it too far physically, where it's actually going to distance people, etc.
Right. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I was reading another interview you did. You talked about, I think before you signed on, or maybe before you got the offer, you heard from Nicole Kidman, who's obviously a producer as well, and you worked with on The Undoing, and she said something like it was like a role like you've never done before. And you obviously are such an accomplished and like acclaimed actor, and I think this is like something like you've never done. But like for you, then what was playing Betty? Then what was the most challenging thing, or maybe in hindsight that you were like, oh, I see what kind of she meant, and like this was like something that I had never really gotten to do before.
Yeah, she was playing her was really a singular, profound experience for me, and I was surprised by her over and over. When Nicole had reached out and said that, and said, you know, this is because she knows me as a woman, and also we had done The Undoing together, and she knew that this would be such a departure, and I think she knew that that was something that would excite me. But spending the time that I did, even before shooting, I just with Betty, it was like she just so many things just kept revealing themselves to me, and I just found myself. It was really I just continued to learn about her more and more in the research, but then really in the playing of her. And you know, her loneliness and isolation is so remarkable, and I think so identifiable, that someone who is struggling with something, if they don't have the right tools, if they don't have the right access, if it's like it can go one of two ways. They can either become further and further isolated or not. And I think in her case, she just, in her attempts to not be isolated, she in fact just becomes further and further isolated. And that was such a sort of painful and acute journey.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And I mean, the show is the Betty's murder and stuff obviously is in the finale, and I that scene is like so upsetting to watch. I was just like, it's like really dramatic, and like kind of, I don't know if with the like not indelible, like I feel like I will not soon forget like watching that. And I guess like for you, getting to perform that, there's so many like the physicality of it I found like unbelievable, and I can imagine but I would love to know like how much prep and like rehearsal did you have to do to get that kind of physicality, especially because it's in such a confined space, and then like obviously the emotions of it as well. But I guess like starting there, like just like physically, and like the choreography between like you and Lizzie and stuff, like how much time did you have for that, and like how did you kind of approach that?
The scene, I haven't watched it, but I'll never forget doing that scene. And the truth is, when I did ADR, I went in to do ADR for it, and I found, you know, it's such an interesting thing, because of course your mind does know the difference to a point, but I think there are so many things as actors that get held in your body, and your body doesn't necessarily know the difference. And it was really wild, because I remember it had barely begun, a part of the scene, and my palms were sweating, my back was sweating, I was shaking, and I actually had to, I mean, I did that ADR sort of, which I often do. I'll turn away, or I'll close my eyes, or you know, or do one version like that where you're just listening, and then one version where you're actually looking. But with this, I really was turned away for most of that part of the ADR session. As far as how we shot it, there was a lot of thoughtful prep in advance. It had been boarded by Leslie, and we had stunt rehearsal, and then we had just sort of rehearsal where we were, because we blocked the scene based on Candy's testimony. And then, but there were moments that we didn't rehearse, that we would sort of, not the physical parts, but sort of some of the moments of just us sitting and talking. We would kind of jump ahead so that we weren't doing that in rehearsal. And I'm glad, because there was so much surprise. I love to rehearse, but I also love to not rehearse. It really depends. But certainly with the physical stuff, rehearsal is so valuable. I'm also someone who, I think every actor is just different in terms of stunts and in terms of that kind of the physical part of things. It's something that I always lean in towards, and I always gravitate towards. I always have. To me, it's such a part of the performance, and I also love physicality. I love the challenge of it. I love the exhaustion of it. And I love the kind of dance of it. I grew up dancing, and so I think it's such a wonderful thing to have something choreographed so that everyone is safe, so that everyone knows what's happening and where you're going next. But then when you rehearse it and when you have it choreographed, there is this incredible freedom and discovery that can happen. And I love when that happens with stunts or something like that sequence. And then we shot it over 4 days with a weekend in between. I was very pregnant at the time of shooting it. And so I did have a stunt double, but the truth is, I don't, I think my stunt double did what she would have done whether I was pregnant or not. I did as much as I kind of think pregnant women can do anything. Not that they have to or should, but in a way, I find the pregnancy part of it irrelevant. It's like my comfort doesn't change, pregnant or not. It sort of is what it is. And I've worked through 3 pregnancies now. And so to me, it was, I did everything I would have done had I not been pregnant. And then our doubles were there, but I always want to do as much as I can. And it was such a surprise, because there were so many things I had thought about so much before shooting the scene, and then we had rehearsed it. But at the time of her death, Betty believed that she was pregnant. She in fact wasn't, but she believed it. And that was something that I was struck by in a way I could have never anticipated, and actually really was one of the most profound experiences I've had as an actor.
It's like, I mean, hearing you talk about it and then just like think, I'm like, it's like such an emotional scene. I can't believe you had to like doing it over, like you said, like 4 days over, like with a weekend in between, I guess, right? Like you were just saying, like, how do you decompress off of that? It's just so traumatic, right? Like, I mean, how do you, and like, then are you staying in that, like, are you like staying like in that space as like over that whole time? I mean, like, how do you like do it? I'm like, it's like I said, it's like a remarkable scene that I will never forget. And I cannot, and I'm just watching it. So to actually having you doing it and then like, yeah, like having to do it so much, I don't know. I'm kind of it just seems remarkable. I would love, like, how did you like kind of like, how do you like unplug from it, I guess, or do you?
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't. And I am someone who, and I have little kids. It's
right.
there. You have to be able to separate, but I couldn't with this particular scene. And I did feel like those 2 days of that weekend, I was in a sort of I was still there. And actually for quite a while after, I had to work harder on letting go of it than I have in the past. I don't want to say, it's you never want to say more than anything else, because it's not a competition between experiences, but in a remarkable and singular way. I was in the sort of throes of it, and it really did have it had me, and I wasn't, until we wrapped that sequence. But even then, it took some time. It did.
Yeah. I mean, like, understandable. And like the performance is just, it's a really remarkable work. There's no easy transition then to go into Shrinking, but I did want to ask you about that as well. Just briefly, which is another great show. And I guess like, and you play Harrison Ford's daughter on that show. I guess like, for me, I was trying to think watching it. I'm obviously grew up watching Harrison Ford movies, a huge fan of all his stuff. He never really, he's played fathers, but never in a way where that is like a actual core relationship, right? In his characters, right? Like, so I guess like playing his daughter in the show, like how did you kind of talk about that or approach that with him? And like, yeah, like I said, not the easiest transition, so I apologize, but like, yeah, like I'm interested in that too. And I think your performance that show is great as well. So yeah, like how was that, like, basically?
It was an amazing set to, because when you play a part like that and you're sort of, it's such a different thing of where you're not in prep and you're not sort of with the company of people in the crew before, you're just kind of walking onto the set. And I hadn't had that experience in a while. And it was such a wonderful set. I think, Jason he's so beloved. He is one of those people who, like, every crew member, everyone just lights up when you say his name, and having him lead the set and sort of set the tone of the set. And then Harrison he's so wonderful and funny and kind of mischievous in the best way, and brave as an actor, and he wants to try things, and he wants to, which of course, but like really he does. He's not afraid of getting it wrong or trying this, and let's just see, all the wonderful things that you want and that you crave, but that you really especially don't know when you're kind of, walking on essentially it's like a guest star or whatever. And we, on our first scene, I don't know, it was just one of those things and we kind of talked about it, so I know he felt the same way, where we just felt very connected and like we had somehow known each other. There was just a tremendous ease between us, and I think we felt kind of instantly related. I think it was very clear that we both wanted to make brave choices and figure out how, because we, there's only so much real estate. A half an hour show, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of relationships, and so I think we both knew we only have this much real estate to sort of explore this relationship that's so multifaceted and so complicated, and there's so much subtext. And how can we do that? How can we serve this relationship as wholly as possible? And so I don't know, I felt really in it with him right away, and we didn't want to waste any time. And it was a great experience. Bill is very wonderful. It's a really special set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like, I think, like I said, like having you play, like an actor of your caliber playing with him, it does sound like they, like, not bringing a ringer, because like, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like they knew probably that you were going to be very, very capable and good of just coming in and like crushing it. Because like I said, I think those scenes are great with him, and like you said, you don't have a lot of real estate really to make it work. So it's got to be like kind of like you got to hit the ground running, and I think you guys
totally.
Guys too. We have to wrap up, but Lily Rabe, incredible actress, and these are two great shows. Love and Death is just a remarkable performance, and Shrinking as well. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure to talk to you.